We're talking markets with Tommy Grisafi from Advanced Trading, ATI, ProMedia. And Tommy, we're sitting here at the end of the month, end of the quarter. We had a USDA report here at the end of this week. And I got to say that report was pretty ugly here.
It was, Don, and we went into it a little bit strong in that the overnight corn was up, beans were up, things looked better. Kind of felt like we're going to bounce. Corn's had a nice rally this week, by the way. Corn's kind of right back to where it started. We had a very nice rally in corn, but that number in beans was bearish. The wheat number, Board of Trade wheat, KC wheat, Minneapolis wheat, absolute train wreck. Cash wheat, listen to me. Cash wheat has a four in front of it in part of the United States. Yes, in the Ukraine, Russia still invaded inside the Ukraine and they're bombing each other. That is such old news, yet we still want to talk about it. And I myself think, wow, wheat's going to bounce, and it will. But from where, I have no idea now.
As I said, it's the end of the quarter, end of the month. Do we get some fresh thoughts as we go into this thing next Monday?
Yeah, well, think of this. I mean, would you, if Don Wick owned the largest bread store in the world, would you go grow wheat at a $6-7 cost production, or would you just go buy it in the cash market?
Yeah,
So the
exactly.
end user, what would you do?
I think I'd just go buy it, right?
There you go. So sadly, we're here to report that the end user, if you want to help world hunger and starving, this is the best thing that could ever happen ever. That wheat, one of the most global commodities, is at a really low price. It will help calm inflation, and it will help feed the world. It might not feed your family, but it'll feed theirs.
We had a couple of reports this week, not only the stocks report, but the hogs and pigs report, and that was also a surprise and drove that market down here at the end of the week as well.
Yeah, it did. We had a big up day on Thursday in cattle, hogs, feeders, nice bounce. And then we found out the meat's true colors after that report. They sold hogs 1 month, a couple months closed limit down. And then live cattle and feeders took notice and said, you know what, we're going to take some risk off the table too. The problem with meats is maybe we have a bullish story in fundamentals, but there's a certain point where the consumer goes to the store and says, I'm not doing it. I'm switching from those meats to that more pasta. So you go to the meat aisle and you say yes, and then you look at the meat aisle, you're like, pay my iPhone bill or eat steak. You're like, pasta it is. I mean, think of how much food you could produce with a couple pounds of pasta for a few dollars versus the amount of dollars that have to go out and put a high protein beef, pork, chicken meal out there. Chicken's expensive too, by the way.
And there's just a lot of economic security, economic concern right now, I guess, when you take a look at what's happening in Washington, the talk of a government shutdown. What's that do to the marketplace? The uncertainty.
It's negative. It's negative for stocks. It's negative for people who are waiting for their checks for Social Security. It's horrible for the TSA agent who has to go to work but yet doesn't know if they're getting paid. It's bad for America. It's embarrassing. We live in the greatest country in the world, yet the few hundred people who you talk to often, by the way, I understand your cell phone is as well connected to DC as anyone, and very well respected you are out there. But yet, how do we, as voters and taxpayers, say, guys, gals, go do your job?
Yeah, and it's just chaos right now. Actually, earlier today, the Republicans put forth a continuing resolution. It had very little chance of getting passed in the Senate, and Biden was talking about vetoing it anyway. But the conservative Republicans tanked their own party's bill. It had 21 Republicans that went the other direction, and so it's inevitable that we're going to see a government shutdown this weekend. And on top of that, we had a lot of votes this week on on different appropriations bills, funding bills for defense, the State Department, Homeland Security. Those three passed late last night. Actually, agriculture came up, and that went south. That did not pass. So that also creates some anxiety of what's going to happen here in funding some of our important agriculture things going forward.
Let me ask you a question. First, I want to make a statement. I sat at my couch today and watched Dr. David Cole speak at the North Dakota Bankers Association. I understand you are at the North Dakota Bankers Association. When you think as someone who's hitting, you remember the 80s, you're old enough to remember the 80s. I guess that's a compliment or just a fact. Think about what happened in the markets today. corn, beans, and wheat tanked. Interest rates are still on the rise. What did you learn at the North Dakota Bankers Association?
Well, it was one of my reporters that was at Bismarck at that meeting. But obviously, you've got high input costs, you've got inflation. Has to be a lot of concern from the farmer level. They're in that position right now. What do I do? I mean, what are you telling your growers, your customers
Oh,
when you take a look at
you
this?
didn't just put me in the corner on a Friday. Well, I'll answer it because that's my job. That's our job, right? As a trusted advisor to a farmer, it's our job to help them in good times. It's our job to help them in bad times. And simply put, no matter where they are, what they have sold, what they've grown, we need them to get in control. If they're out of control and have a bad, they are not comfortable with their risk profile, we need to take risk off. And we've spent years selling crops at way above our cost production. We are now getting to, or in many cases, below the farmer's cost production. For 2023, they'll be okay in the sense that they have crop insurance. So you know that we had our corn level at such a high level, call it 590, 591. Beans at a much higher level, wheat at a much higher level. And that'll help. But as we go to set the crop insurance period for 2024, it's not going to be as easy. And with all those things you mentioned before, the higher interest rates, the high inputs, $95 crude oil this week. Are you kidding me? Who had that in their 2023 bingo card?
Yeah, it's a lot that we're throwing out there. And also, as we take a look at, well, you mentioned the crude oil, it has to be a concern. What about this weekend? We're going to be obviously seeing a lot of combines continuing to roll. It looks like across much of the Midwest, this is probably one of the biggest harvest weekends. That has to keep this market pressured as well.
Yeah, so we got to talk about that the Mississippi River did not pick up much volume. Maybe these rains that are happening will eventually make it down there, but on the south part or through the locks and dams and stuff, low Mississippi. I'll be traveling out to Iowa this weekend, be in Bettendorf. We actually have a view of the Mississippi River from our office. We'll be able to talk to you more about that on Monday. So that is a key part when you look at spreads, basis, shipping, freight. Is it going down a river? Is it got to be trucked? Is it going to rail? Who is going to buy this stuff? Do we have the demand? You're hearing the noise that China just bought a bunch of corn out of Ukraine. We got China buddies with Russia, Russia buddies with China, China sneaking in Ukraine to buy grain. Hopefully Russia doesn't blow up the grain on the way out. And now we got an American farmer coming and gut slot of harvest. We're going to have harvest pressure. And if it doesn't come through the futures market, it might come through the cash market because that Mississippi River is just the absolute artery to the Midwest. I mean, look at a map of Midwest. You cannot look at America without seeing that river go right through it, starting all the way up by you in Minnesota in some stream and then end up down in New Orleans.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Tommy, a lot on the plate, obviously. If folks have questions, what can they do to get in touch with you?
Well, I'm embarrassed now I got the Ag Bull sweatshirt on with markets like this, but I knew when I started the Ag Bull podcast that we'd have days like this. Give us a call at work, Advanced Trading, 1-800-664-4383. Ask people to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We did have a live USDA forum. Drew Moore at Advanced Trading, Mr. Brian Bastine, Nathan Mangold all spoke. That's out there, Don. I'll send that to you. And if people watching, listening want to click on that, go to our YouTube channel. Folks like yourself have been great contributors, and I got a feeling we'll be doing a